Hey everyone, we're happy to have you here with us today as we cover change monitoring and recovery with Cayosoft. I'm Justin. I work alongside the Microsoft experts here, and there are just a couple housekeeping things to review before we jump in. First off, your microphones are muted, but please don't let that stop you from asking questions today. We do encourage you to ask all the questions you came prepared with or you happen to have during our time together. Now, depending on how you joined, whether in browser or through an app, you'll see a question and/or chat section on your screen. Drop your questions in there and we will keep an eye on that. If we happen to not cover your question, we will follow up with you on that individually. I'd also like to point out that we do have a few data sheets in the handout section for this event, so feel free to check those out, download, and share with your team. Right now, I'm going to hand it off to Bob Boble, who is the co-founder and CEO of Cayosoft. So with that, welcome, Bob.
Hey, Justin, thank you so much for that welcome. I appreciate it. Let's get on to the show. Along with me today is Brian Perella. He's our senior systems engineer. Brian knows more about our products, I think, than anybody does. And Brian also worked with me at our previous gig. I don't know how long you were there, Brian, 8 years, something like that, 6 years, something crazy. But Brian is really 10 years, yeah. Brian is really steeped in change auditing and change monitoring, and was one of the very first people to help roll out the change monitoring or auditing tool we had at our previous employer. So he knows an awful lot. I'm going to get through 2 or 3 slides very quickly, turn it over to him so you can actually see the product in action. Why do we change monitor? Why do we monitor things for change? Well, it's important to understand that today's Active Directory, your on-premise exchange, your cloud exchange, those things are all under attack. Whether it's just a simple mistake, an insider threat from a mistake, or an external threat like a ransomware attack, there are issues that will cause outages. And the idea is to prevent those outages or those mistakes as best you can. So we did a joint commission, we commissioned a study by Gartner Group, and we helped them assemble some questions. And one of our questions was, what would happen if your Active Directory stopped working? You have a directory outage, whether that's just a mistake, delete a group and, 500 people don't have an application, or if it is a full directory outage. And so when they ranked these, everybody was able to pick their top 3. Number 1, you can imagine, pretty simple to guess, is that if your directory goes out, your organization ceases to operate. And in fact, several weeks ago, Lincoln College was hit with a ransomware attack that happened on Monday and Tuesday, and they shut their doors forever on Friday. And unfortunately, that college had opened back in, I want to say 1870 some. So it'd been around an awful long time, and when they weren't able to log in and access their materials, it effectively put them out of business. It was too costly to pay the ransom, etc. So finding things that might allow that, and then figuring out a way to recover if it does happen, or I shouldn't say if, when it does happen. Keep in mind that the mentality now is to believe that there's already a problem. Now your job is to find the problem and correct it. But whether it's a full outage or a simple outage, you need tools that are going to monitor the changes that will lead to one of those events. And it's important to understand that the native tools provided, and since we're talking about Active Directory and affiliated applications, the native tools Microsoft provides is simply not enough. You need to have continuous visibility through ongoing change monitoring. And that visibility has to go beyond what event logs are going to do, beyond what your SIEM tool is going to do. It has to be direct observation and continuous direct observation of all changes. Backup snapshots are not good enough. Native logs, frankly, are sometimes the first thing that hackers attack. They're also missing things. If a programmer failed to throw an event into the log, they're not going to be there, right? And SIEM tools and change auditing tools that rely on on event data, you have to understand it's as good as the weakest link, which is the events themselves. Don't get me wrong, events are important. They show you what the most critical things are, but they don't show you necessarily every change. In addition to that, you need to be able to use that solution to quickly isolate changes that you're interested in. They could be suspicious changes. They could be that you suspect the change is a mistake. So it's not necessarily a suspicious change. It might be a perfectly good authorized change. It just shouldn't have happened. And so you need to be able to find those quickly. You need to have an interface that lets you sort through that volume. It'll be a large volume of information. And ideally, you would have it in if you're running a hybrid mode, ideally you'd have it for hybrid, not just on-premise or not just cloud, but hybrid mode. That's a big failure today. People don't understand that somebody may log in on-premise, but start performing tasks under their linked account in Office or in Azure. And so you have to have the whole picture there, provisioning those accounts, deprovisioning those accounts, seeing changes in settings to the both directories. All that has to be in one big digestible list, and you have to have a tool that'll let you slice and dice that information to find what you're looking for, or a solution that will help you by encouraging you to look in certain areas, or putting up predefined reports, alerts, etc. But getting it all in one place is really, really key. Real-time alerts for critical changes. So if somebody goes out and changes domain admins or global admins role in Azure, or they start messing with your conditional access policies in Azure, you want to know those things immediately. It may be another administrator who's authorized to do those things, but there's no intercommunication mechanism that alerts you to those changes except for a good real-time change monitoring solution. And finally, what makes a good change monitoring solution great is the ability to do instant rollback, whether you pick a change that you don't want and roll it back, or you know a specific change should never occur, and so you just set it up to automatically roll it back should that appear. That's a pretty good component to have. Integrated recovery, if you want to think of it that way. By the way, there's a little note off to the side here. I didn't know this until we started doing this, but one of our folks pulled this out to do basic change monitoring across hybrid. There are 6 different event logs you probably should, first of all, make sure are enabled, and then be sorting through and then correlating amongst to see what changes are actually happening. And by the way, that's it for PowerPoint for me for now. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead over to our control panel here, and I'm going to turn on Brian's presenter role. And Brian, let's go ahead and have you share your screen. Show us real-time monitoring and alerting. Show us some custom queries. I want to see the instant rollback. And I know it's not really part of this, you change auditing, but I'd also like to ask you to show us just a quick overview of the instant full forest recovery, the immediate full forest recovery that we do in case your entire on-premise Active Directory is wiped out.
Okay, am I sharing?
You are, looks good, thank you.
All right, thanks Bob, thanks everyone for joining. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna spend a little time, go through the product that we call Guardian, so Cayosoft Guardian. Its job is to monitor your on-premise AD and your Azure Active Directory and look for changes and record those changes. So objects being created or deleted or attribute level changes. I'm actually going to start, I'm going to jump right at it, and I'm going to make a few changes, and then I'll come back and we'll walk through this. So let's go over to Azure to start with, and I'll just make one simple change over here. So let's pick, how about Alex Bass? He sounds as good as anyone. And I'm going to take a look at what administrative roles that he has. As soon as my browser catches up with me, there it goes. So I can see he has no administrator role at the moment. So I'm going to manage roles. And I'm going to give him global administrator. I'm going to save that. And I'm going to make a few other changes as well. I'm want to make some AD changes. By the way, as long as we're here looking at the browser, I'll just point out I've got multiple tabs open here, so we'll be kind of jumping back and forth between these, but I've got my 365 Admin Center. I've got my Azure admin panel. We'll come back to this in a minute. Here's my Azure Resource Portal. And then I've got my email open and Teams. And we'll see some alerts coming to both of those places. And then, of course, the Guardian console itself, which I'll come back to momentarily. I'm going to make a few changes in Active Directory now while we're at it. So let's pick out, I guess Carla is as good as anybody. Let's check out her memberships. So she's got a few group memberships. Let's go ahead and add her to another group. Domain admin. Okay. And then I'm also going to update just a minor change here. So let's do something like look at Norm Peterson. And I see his office is Boston. I'm just going to make a change, move him to someplace else. Really simple, basic level change. And then lastly, I'm going to delete somebody. So let's see, I've got a Batman over here and I've got Robin. So let's delete Robin. So there we go. We've made a handful of changes. What I'm going to do is come back now to the Guardian console, and I'll start by just looking at the overall console itself. So kind of the dashboard, we call it. And you can see that I've got multiple Active Directories, my on-premise Active Directories configured for management, for monitoring by Guardian. I can add as many as I like. And I also have my Azure tenant added. By the way, I could add multiple tenants as well. I don't actually have any more, so I can't add any more because I don't have any, but if I had multiple tenants, I could add those here as well. And then I have a few little indicators as far as my graphical representation of how many objects I have, a different type, as well as this little graph here that shows me quantities of activities over time. So that's kind of the intro to the dashboard. And then I've got a few more panels down below here that talk about backup and recovery of AD in general. So I'll come back to that at the end of our little chat here. So what I want to do is I'm going to jump straight to the change history. Change history is a running record of all of the changes that we're making, both on-prem and Azure. And as changes occur, that information gets recorded, written back in here as a change item, and then I can see those details. So for example, here's that domain admin group change that we made. And by the way, I can see the little red ball, little red indicator that tells me that was more severe critical change. By the way, I should have also received an email notification. So if I just jump over, check my email, yep, there we go. There's my email notification telling me about that particular change. And then also I should have received that same alert in Teams. So here we go. You can do alerting to email or to Teams or to both. Those just a couple examples there. And then if I open that up and look at the details, I'll also notice that I have a change record for both the group and the user. So here's the change for the group itself, the domain admin group, and I can see membership was changed and this particular user was added. You also notice I have a button here called rollback. I'm able to roll back or undo that change if I think that was a mistake, shouldn't have been made. I'm not going to do that just yet. I want to show you there's another item for the user. So this helps you for when you're searching. So you can search by group or by user. In this case, there's a change for the Carla user directly. And in this case, the membership changed. She was added to that particular group. So again, from either perspective, you can see that. I'm going to go ahead and roll that change back. And you could do that from either the user or the group. Doesn't really matter. By the way, you might have also noticed we have another alert that showed up. So when I refresh, I have another alert popping in. And if I jump over to my email again, I have a new alert. This is the one for the Azure change, the global administrator role that I added Alex to. So again, that showed up in both my email notification as well as my Teams notification. So that change showed up there. And I had a few other changes. There's my deletion of the Robin account. Here is the Norm Peterson change. So if I look at Norm, remember we modified his office. We changed him from Boston to Dallas. So that's no good either. I'm going to roll back that change. And then I also had the Alex user that we mentioned. So there's, again, I get two of those, one for the user itself, one for that role that we assigned to. So either one of these, if I look at this one, it's going to show me Alex. There we go. So this Alex user was added to that particular role. I can also do a rollback on that particular item. So right now, I'm just kind of showing you that items, as changes occur, items are rolling in, and this will be just a continuous, non-stop, you know, update as items are being created, deleted, modified. This stuff's going to continue to roll in here. And then we have the ability to view, and I'll show you some functionality for reporting and searching and finding specific things rather than just looking at kind of a random list of stuff that's rolling in as it occurs. For the moment, what I want to do is I want to jump back and look at some of those changes that we made. And we changed Norm's office, if you remember. And remember, it used to be Boston, and I changed it to something else. I think I changed it to Dallas, but then I did the rollback. So now it's fixed. It's back the way it's supposed to be. And then this Carly user, we had added her to that domain admin group. If I look at groups, she is no longer a member of that domain admin group because I also rolled that change back. And then there was another change over here on the Azure side. Let's refresh Alex. And you'll notice that Alex is back to no roles again, back the way he started. So I had given him the global administrator role, and then through the Guardian alert or event, I just did a rollback and that removed that change, put it back the way it was. So now what I want to do is focus more on how do we find stuff in this endless stream of data. How do we actually find stuff? So we have a bunch of built-in what we call queries. So we can create custom queries. We have a bunch of standard queries as well. So you see this list here. I can look for just any AD changes. I could look for just Azure changes. I've got one here for, here we go. Here's one for conditional access related changes. So I'll take a look at that one as an example. This one's showing me only changes related to conditional access policy. If I open up this one, see that we updated the users included and Beverly was added. So let's take a look at that. Let's look over to Azure and let's go to security, conditional access. And that was my test conditional access policy. And if I look at the users that were included, there we go. There's the users that are included in this particular policy, and there's Beverly. So if I were to see that there's the evidence where that change actually occurred, Beverly was added, but maybe I didn't want that to happen. Maybe that shouldn't have happened. So I can just roll that back, and that will remove Beverly from that particular conditional access policy from that assignment. So if I go back over to conditional access, and go back to my test policy, and let's see what users are included now. And I notice that Beverly is now gone. She's been removed. That change when she was added was captured. I was able to do the rollback from the actual event itself. And so that change has been undone or rolled back. So that's just one example. By the way, I did that from a built-in query. And like I said, I could pick any one of these other queries or I'm just going to remove the filter here, or I can create my own from scratch using these filters. So for example, I might say I'm interested in creating a query for only changes in a certain time frame. I'll just pick the last 7 days. And then I might be interested in only changes of a particular type of object. So in this case, I'm just going to do a search for AD users. And then I'm also going to look for specifically an individual action. So I'm just going to look for deletion of an object. So I've got this filtered a couple different ways here. I'm looking for only deletions of objects, and I'm only looking for AD users. So I've excluded, groups and computers and OUs and any other object type. And I'm also filtering by time, in this case, the last 7 days. So now I'm left with only the 3 items that match those criteria. By the way, you notice the item at the top, the most recent one is the deletion of the Robin user, and we did that just a few minutes ago as well. So that obviously appears at the top, which is what I would expect. And now I can also save these. So I'm going to click the save button, and I'm going to give this one a name, and I'll call it, users. Help if I could type, deleted, and last 7 days, something along those lines. And I'll say, yes, I want to save that. So now, in addition to my my standard queries, I also have custom queries. By the way, under this little custom section here, it shows you the 3 most recent that you've used, but you can always jump to the more queries and you'll see the entire list of all the built-in queries, as well as here's that custom query that I just added. You can see here's the person that added it, and there's the name of it, user deleted in the last 7 days, yada, yada. So you can pick out any one of these and jump back and forth to it. So yeah, I want to go back to that one, take a look at that report. So it's very convenient. You can create the queries, however you like, and save those, and you can jump back and forth to them pretty quickly and easily. You can also turn them into a report. So rather than having to come into the console, every single time you want to look at a particular report, you can create the report itself. So I've already created my custom query, and now I just want to have a report generated. So I'm going to click Add Report. And what the report will do is it will run automatically on a schedule, and it can deliver the report however I like. So I'm going to say, let's run this one every week, and we'll start it at about 8 a.m. every Monday. That sounds good enough. And I'm going to save that. And then we also have the option for how it's created. So we can do an HTML report, we can do a CSV report, and we can decide how it's going to be delivered. So there's my Teams, there's my email. So I can turn on the email delivery, and then I can also update the properties of that email delivery. And one thing that I like to do, just kind of me, where it says send as link. Link means it's going to send me a link to that report in the Guardian web interface. Occasionally I like to change it and just send the attachment. So if I'm sending the report out to some other people that maybe not administrators, I just want them to get a report on some scheduled basis. That way I could just send the attachment and I don't have to give them access to anything if I don't want to. So now at this point, this is going to run every Monday at 8 a.m. Run that query, send the report as an attachment to email. I can also run it on demand if I don't want to wait around to give it a test to make sure it's doing what I want it to do. And then I'll go ahead and close that. By the way, if I check my email now, there we go. No, there's the alert. I don't have my email yet for my report. Should have been here by now. I'll go back and have a look at that. Let me take a look at that report. I thought I clicked run. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. I'll just do it one more time just to be sure. And if that doesn't come through, then I'll deal with that later. In the meantime, what I'm going to do is I'm going to also create an alert. So what an alert will do is basically run the same query, but now it will alert anytime a new item that comes in matching that criteria. So again, so I could say, let's deliver via email. I could also do Teams. I'm just going to do email alone this time, and I'll even edit the name of it so it makes a little bit more sense. So this is not going to be a last 7 days report. This is just going to be alert to tell me that a user was deleted. So I'll save that. And that looks good. So the next time I do a deletion, I should get a new email, excuse me, a new email showing up with that particular item. And I'm going to remove that filter as well. And I'm going to go and give that one a test as well. So let's go ahead and delete Batman. And I should get a couple of things. So let me go ahead and jump to that user deleted query. Let's see. Oh, by the way, there's my alert. You see I got an alert showing up at the top, user deleted Batman. But I'm going to go to that last 7 days deletion query that we created earlier and confirm. Yep, indeed, there's my Batman item. I'm going to check my email, and I did get my alert. So clearly I have something wrong with my report. I'll go figure that out. And then the last thing I wanted to kind of cover was not just object and attribute creation, deletion, modification, but also the kind of the ultimate scenario where, as Bob mentioned, your Active Directory has a fatal event, some kind of catastrophic event that happens, and your AD goes away and it's no longer available. Now, what do? We have to put it back. We have to get that AD back with everything that it had before, all the OUs, all the groups, all the users, everything. It's not pleasant. That's not something you can easily do. So another function, another piece of Guardian is forest recovery. So we start out by doing backups. So this is above and beyond the normal just, auditing of changes and recording of changes and the ability to roll back and report and all that. So in addition to that, we also have the ability to take periodic backups of the entire AD, just everything as it is. And you can see here's my backup plan. I've got mine scheduled to run every day, and it does its job and it backs up. And then from that point forward, if, and hopefully, it doesn't ever happen, but it seems to be becoming more frequent. But if the time comes when my AD is toast and it no longer exists and I need to recover from nothing, that's what this will allow you to do. So now I could go to my recovery plan. And I don't actually have any recovery plans yet. I'm not going to go through the whole recovery process. It takes a little bit of time, probably about maybe 45 minutes in my particular environment. But what I can do is I can say, let's create a forest recovery plan. And it already knows about the forest. By the way, this forest has 2 domains in it. It already knows the forest that it's backing up. So that's the forest I'm going to recover. By default, it's going to recover to the latest, the most recent restore time. You can change this if you like. And then I really just need to recover 1 domain controller for each domain, because all I'm trying to do at this point is just get back operational, get back in business. So I just like to leave it at 1. And then I'll say yes. And then there's a few options. So I'm going to go ahead and say deploy recovery site, and I'll explain what this is in a minute. I'm going to click that button. And actually, before I do it, I'm going to jump over to my Azure portal and I'll look at my resources. And you notice I don't have anything here. There's no VMs, there's no networks, there's no disks, there's just nothing here. Well, one of the nice things about this recovery option, I'm going to go ahead and say deploy, is it allows me to automatically restore to Azure, and I don't have to do any prep work. So I don't have to install an operating system. I don't have to have some hardware on standby, install the operating system, get it all ready and set to go. I don't have to do anything. I just have to say deploy recovery site to Azure. I don't have to use this option if I don't want to, but it sure is convenient. So it will provision all of the resources needed to do the recovery into Azure. So it's going to create the VMs, it'll create all the associated resources with those VMs, and it'll be ready to go. At that point, I can actually go ahead and do the recovery, and it'll recover that AD right back to those VMs. If I jump back to my Azure resources now, I'll probably have a little bit showing up. This process, there we go. So now I've got no VM yet, it'll catch up. Once it completes, it normally takes about 5 minutes, maybe a little bit less than 5 minutes to do the deployment. But it'll have my VMs and the IP addresses, the network, the storage account, everything else that's required to make this recovery work. And there's my VMs now. So there's my VM. This one here, DC1, is from my root domain. And then looks like the other one main. Oh, nope, not here yet. Another few seconds, it'll show up. And then I'll be able to, there's my child DC from the child domain. So anyway, this will go through, it's only at about 1 minute and 40 seconds, it looks like, but typically that takes around 5 minutes to complete that recovery. And then all the resources are available. And then I can just go ahead and execute the actual recovery itself. I'm not going to do that, today. It just takes a little bit of time, like I said. But at the end of that, I'm left with a domain controller or multiple domain controllers that I can now start to use. So
Hey, Brian,
anyway, yeah, go ahead.
That's pretty cool stuff. We that Gartner study or survey that we commissioned, one of the top items that people complained about with all the other people trying to do forest recoveries was that if you're using any of those other solutions, it's a nightmare to test it. So people, to meet their whatever legal or regulatory compliance or governance requirements, what they do is they try and test it once a year and be lucky if they could. The folks that were trying to use the Microsoft guidance, I don't know if you've seen that 50-page website that doesn't give you any way to do it. It just tells you what you should be doing. They're trying to build it by hand or script it, and that doesn't work really well. And then there are other solutions out there that do all of this, but they don't help you. They'll help you figure out operating systems, but they don't actually deploy a site. And so this was really key for us, so that you could literally test this every day if you wanted to, right? Not always going to test it every day. It's usually, every quarter or what have you. But as you're, doing security assessments, or you're doing, answering these questionnaires that everybody's sort of faced with now about, how agile is your business? Do you have a strategy for recovery if something happens? This points straight to that and lets you answer those questions in a way that you just couldn't with any other solution. It was pretty fun to be working with this. So good stuff.
Yeah, so that Microsoft document, that you mentioned, it gives you, all kinds of steps you need to do, A, B, C, D, E, F, and there's not enough letters in the alphabet. But that's essentially what the recovery is doing, is it's automating all of those processes.
Right. By the way, this is what we filed our patent for. There's a lot more to it than just automatically creating isolated recovery sites. It's also the recovery, and then there's a lot more on the way from us in terms of this recovery piece. There are several other things that can be done when you automate this that no one else, I think, has even thought of, just to make it dead simple, easy, and accurate and reliable. So, yeah.
By
Sorry.
the way, you see my. No, I'm just going to point out my deployment of the recovery site is completed. That took 4 minutes and 6 seconds. So that's ready to go. And then, like I said, the next piece, I would go through, click on verify. Again, I'm not going to do that now. It just takes a little bit longer than we have in a demo. But you go through the verification process and then the actual recovery. So for me, maybe 40 minutes more, and that will be complete. But that's the entire process. It's really, really simple. All my resources were created. By the way, I also can, as I'm testing and I go through this process and I decide, okay, that worked. I can, right from the Guardian console, I can also delete all of this and then, test again later.
Cool stuff.
I can do that, from the recovery site. I could just say, yeah, delete that recovery site. I can go ahead and delete my recovery plan, which will allow me to delete the recovery site all in one shot. So all of that kind of
Automated cleanup too. That's awesome.
Goes hand in
Yeah,
hand.
that's awesome. Yeah, one other comment. We've had a couple customers tell us that they're planning on not only setting this up for recovery. We've had a couple of customers also mention that this would be great to build a separate forest or a separate isolated lab just to do testing. I thought that was a good idea. Then you have a almost identical copy to your production to do your testing. I thought that was a really smart idea. So, hey, Brian, we have a couple of quick comments. They're not questions, they're comments. And all 4 people mentioned the same thing when you set up your report that you failed to enable the send as email. There's an email checkbox that you missed somewhere else. I don't know what it was. I'm just saying.
Oh, that's
they identified
probably
what the issue was.
Yeah, that probably makes total sense. Yeah, that's just my genius at work.
There you go. We all have
So
those days. So.
Yeah, if I'll jump back to that and I'll just confirm that. So if I look at that one and edit that report, I think what I did was, yeah, you see what I did? You see email is turned off. What I did was I clicked this button. Well, I should have clicked it here. And I was so anxious to go and change the properties that I forgot to actually enable it. So that's my toggle switch right there that I missed. I clicked over here instead of over here. That's exactly what happened. So thanks,
and I
guys.
think everybody will send you a support bill for that. Awesome. Thanks everybody for noticing that.
Yeah, I was so anxious to change the properties. I was totally ignoring the fact that I didn't actually turn on the email report.
Yeah, I thought one other thing I'll mention is in that change history, and I think you might have mentioned it, we are gathering events in the background and correlating with them. But what was really strange to me when the first time I saw this was that in the change history, we were seeing things that we didn't know were actually, we kind of knew they were happening, but there were back-end tasks that Microsoft is doing, load balancing, its Exchange mailboxes across servers, all sorts of crazy stuff. So we do have a question that came in. Well, first of all, James, thanks for paying attention, and everybody else who mentioned that. Rob asked the question, do you offer a solution to help with restoring Azure AD, specifically an object is deleted from AD, sync to Azure AD, hard delete, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, so the scenario, and I'll take this one, Brian, since I think you have more to show us, or
by the way, was that I don't know if I heard the full question, but was that how do we recover deleted objects?
Hybrid deleted objects, synced, that are hard deleted.
Yeah, you can go ahead and explain that. And while you're doing that, I can go ahead and take Batman here and that deletion. Let's roll back the deletion.
So the cool part about our restoring of hybrid AD objects is that it doesn't matter where you start. You can start on the Azure AD side or you can start on the hybrid AD side. It's smart enough to know that it's a hybrid object during the restore, and it'll fix it on both sides, right? So just so everybody knows this, in the recycle bins in Azure AD, you can do what's called a hard delete, which skips the recycle bin and just destroys the object. On the on-premise side, you don't have a recycle bin unless you enable it, and effectively it's just a stage of the normal deleted items container that doesn't remove a bunch of attributes. So you get an extra, I don't know, 180 days with the attributes, and then you can pull stuff out. But in both cases, those are simple undeletes. So if the object is hard deleted, it must be recreated. So that's sort of one thing. The other thing is really about the changes that don't get put into recycle bin. So if I go in and I change properties of an attribute, attribute properties of an object, I clear the group memberships, for example, none of that is ever in the recycle bin, because the only thing the recycle bins do are delete, hold deleted objects, or undelete. And if you do a hard delete, it skips it. So, and the answer is we do it. Brian just did it, and it figured out how to go out to the cloud and restore that object as well. Now, the resources are varied. We don't do all resources yet. That is on its way. Those backlinks or links to other objects, you have a time window for restoring those. And I believe that's our, I want to say Q2 release or Q3 release. I don't have that in front of me. But excellent question. Excellent question. Does can pick up PS kinds of things happen? We have AD admins doing a lot of PowerShell. Yeah, absolutely. Any change made with PowerShell, we're going to see the change itself. We don't rely on event logs, so any physical change that we observe, think of it as observing it. We actually go out and scan for those changes. Whether it's a human doing it, a back-end process at Microsoft using Graph, or somebody using Graph or PowerShell, we will see all of those. We do grab the event logs and coordinate for additional detail there, but we will see those, absolutely. And a track report when registry has been modified. That's a great question. I want to say yes on domain controllers. We do not expand this out to just any old server. We're really looking at the identity data, the users, groups, etc., and other objects and partitions in either your on-premise directory or your cloud directory. Where we go beyond that is in some of the additional services that you find in Azure AD and some of the additional objects in on-premise Active Directory that are outside of the directory, sysvol content and things like that. In the cloud, we are looking at conditional access policies and other types of security settings on premise. I mentioned the one, but it's also admin SD holder and other things. In Q3, we will have a pretty big announcement around expanding our monitoring, so please stay tuned. Stay tuned for that. All right, we got that one. Looks like we got all the questions up to date.
So there's my, yeah, by the way, my Batman is back, just in case you weren't looking. And then once I enabled my report for email, it actually did deliver the report.
Awesome. Very good. All right, I'm going to go ahead and grab presenter mode back from you, Brian. All right, so for those of you who saw us in an email or online and decided to join, I wanted to just take 2 seconds and explain what we do as Cayosoft as a full solution. Cayosoft Guardian, which Brian just demonstrated, and the Forest Recovery solution, which he explained there at the end, provides change auditing, object and attribute recovery, as well as forest recovery, and that is a true hybrid solution. So the slide I put up right now, Guardian covers the last 2 columns, so it's great for compliance reporting, legal or regulatory compliance, and overall governance. And then obviously recovery is for resilience of your identity, so that you get hit with a ransomware attack, we bring you back. You get hit with 1,000 cuts, little mistakes internally, or people doing malicious changes, we recover in those cases as well. And we always provide instant recovery. You find something you don't like, you click it, you recover it. That's instant. Even with Active Directory forest recovery, we do that. So keep an eye on that. We have some pretty big announcements coming up over the next 3 to 6 months. I think everybody will be impressed and surprised. We also have another solution called Cayosoft Administrator. It is a full true hybrid and cloud-only management solution that allows you to improve your security and effectively implement a portion of Zero Trust to better control the day-to-day administration of your Active Directory, whether it's on-premise in hybrid mode or cloud mode. There is integration between the two. For example, you can delegate over over recovery of the recycle bins. That's pretty cool. You can't do that natively. But the idea behind administrators to provide roles and rules that provide extremely granular security, allow you to create administrative scopes so you can control what people can see and do, provides an automation platform so that a lot of the things that might be showing up as problems in Guardian can actually be prevented. So if you do find something wrong, somebody's made a mistake or made a malicious change or other type of event, you can go back into administrator and prevent them from doing that in the first place. That is a 3-tier proxy architecture, which lets you revoke or remove all your native permissions, and your administrators who are doing your day-to-day work or your end users doing self-service have one place to manage either from on-premise or cloud. Very simple implementation, and really has a good, I think, ability to give you an overall solution for sort of managing the mess that Microsoft kind of left us with as enterprise customers. With that said, if you want more information about the products, cayosoft.com/demo. There's a form there if you want an individual demonstration where we can answer your questions one-on-one, or you can invite colleagues. Please let us know. If you're interested in pricing for the 3 different solutions we showed you, cayosoft.com/quote. We do let you download a free trial. Go to cayosoft.com/trial.
4 minutes and 6 seconds.
And if you just, okay, Brian, if you just have a question, a tech question or a sales type question, cayosoft.com/question. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Justin to walk us out. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Really appreciate it.
Awesome, thanks, Bob. Yeah, and thank you, everyone. So as Bob mentioned, feel free to reach out using these resources listed here on the last slide. I do want to check for any last minute questions. I don't see any. Thank you, James, for your comment. So with that, we can end here. I hope you all take care. Thank you for joining us. Be on the lookout for more email notifications for events in the near future. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.